In my last video, I built this system, which has an RTX 3060 in it. And after I finished building it, I went onto my local PC shop and saw that they had this graphics card, the RX 6700 XT Satan Edition, I think is what it's called, on sale for the same price I paid for the graphics card in that system, which, yeah, I think I may have bought the wrong graphics card. Let's find out today. Now, not only did we get a 6700 XT, but it's even a Power Color Beelzebub edition, which comes with cooling infused with the power of Satan. Although, doesn't the naming scheme kind of imply the graphics card's gonna catch on fire and burn forever? I don't know, it's a bit weird. But anyway, let's open it up. Let's not think too much about it. Thick foam. Oh, it's a heavy boy. Whoa, on build quality alone, I can't believe this cost about the same as that MSI card, because this is like all metal. The backplate is metal. Even this shroud has like bits of metal on the side with like high quality plastic, and then there's like a big ass heatsink under that. What a card! That backplate's making me feel some pretty adult feelings. Moving swiftly on from my adult feelings, specs-wise, things don't get any better for the 3060. The two GPUs may share a very similar memory configuration, obviously excluding the 3060 Scumbag Edition. But in terms of core specification, the 6700 XT's making the 3060 look a bit malnourished. But you know what they say, don't judge a book by its render configuration. Make it fight another book to the death in random gaming benchmarks to determine its worth. Now for the comparison, I'm not going to be using that system and the 3060 in it because, well, it's a giveaway system. So I'm going to use this 3060 that I found in an AliExpress system instead. But with that, let's throw this in a system first so that we can get a baseline of what the mistake performance is like, and then we'll try out something a little bit more evil. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a goat sacrifice themed system for this test, but as far as I understand, Nezuko-chan is a demon, so I guess it works. Oh, that's potentially a problem. Okay, so the 3060 fits, although Satan is definitely not gonna fit. Okay, easy solution. I'm just gonna remove the middle fan. That's reasonable, right? It still doesn't fit. So I guess we're gonna have to use this system, which kind of makes more sense anyway, considering that it has basically the same CPU in it as that white Be Quiet system. Quick note, I couldn't get the system to output a signal with that AliExpress 3060 in it, so I ended up using the one from the MSI pre-built, which I think is a Ventus X2. Anyway, let's finally get to the testing. Now at 1080p high settings, Battlefield 5 is giving us a lot of frames per second here. You can see that we are averaging well over 120 frames per second. So yeah, I don't know, for a relatively demanding FPS game, this is a great result. Although it is at 1080p, you'd hope a graphics card like this would competently run games at this resolution. So I think 1440p will be a resolution where we can more clearly illustrate the difference between the two GPUs. But before we get into all of that, let's try a more demanding game. Let's try Cyberpunk. Now, Cyberpunk is also running at high settings, 1080p here, and we're getting well over 60 frames per second. So even for more demanding visual safari style games like this, you're getting a solidly over 60 frame per second experience, which is good. It feels nice and responsive. It doesn't look great, but that's because I'm running 1080p on a 4K monitor, so that's my fault. It's not the game's fault. But let's drop Satan into the system and see what that does. Wow, that is a lot of frame rates that the 6700 XT is pumping out. Now, it is important to remember that Battlefield 5 does love it some AMD booty, but it's still very impressive. We are consistently bumping off that 200 frame per second limit at 1080p high settings. I think this graphics card may be more comfortable at a higher resolution, but we'll get to that in a second. Also, temperature-wise, this GPU is a beast. We're sitting at about 50 degrees Celsius, and interestingly, despite the dual 8 pins on the 6700 XT compared to the single 8 pin on the RTX 3060, the power draw is very similar to that of the 3060. Ooh, we're in the 90 frames per second. 6700 XT, you spoil us with all these frames. So the 6700 XT gives us a reasonable amount over 80 frames per second, and yeah, it feels very smooth and nice. Oh, Lauda, I just committed a crime. I think with that, it's a good point to switch over to 1440p and see how the little 3060 loser GPU handles that. At 1440p, we've taken a reasonable knee to the groin of the 3060. We are still above 100 frames per second, which is decent, but it's not like blazing fast anymore. And at this resolution, the 3060 isn't as happy as it is at 1080p. So moving from 1080p to 1440p on Battlefield 5 drops you out of that frame rate sweet spot for the game at high settings. I'm curious to see if the same thing happens with Cyberpunk. Now, it becomes even clearer with Cyberpunk at 1440p high settings, where we've dropped under 60 frames per second. Now, it's still good, like 40 to 50 frames per second is a reasonable result, and the game still feels fine, although there is a little bit of additional input lag. But we have sacrificed that 60 frame per second line, which gives you such a good gaming experience, you know? So the extra horsepower of the 6700 XT may really be useful here. So let's see what happens with that. Wow, moving up to 1440p has barely affected the frame rate. It is dipping a little bit lower, but if anything, it's led to better frame pacing. Before, the frame time graph was a little bit all over the place, whereas now the game feels really smooth. Also, at 1080p, the difference between the 3060 and the 6700 XT was subjectively very similar. In a blind test, you'd struggle to tell the difference between them. But at 1440p, the difference is a lot more noticeable. It is important to note that the gameplay was on 2 different maps, but I will have standardized benchmarks coming in a second. First, let's see what Cyberpunk does with the 6700 XT at 1440p. It's in a situation like this where you can really feel the extra muscle. You know, with Battlefield 5 at 1080p, going from 160 frames per second to almost 200 is barely noticeable. It's functionally the same thing, but going from in the 40s to the 60s subjectively feels like a bigger difference to me. And for the same amount of money, why would you not want that? But enough of me rambling about subjective gaming experience. Let's have a look at some benchmarks. So with that, I think purely in terms of gaming, yeah, I kinda bought the wrong graphics card. It's pretty crazy that the 6700 XT costs the same as the 3060. It's even crazier that the similarly performing 6650 XT is 150 Canadian dollars cheaper than both these cards, although pricing is all over the place at the moment. Beyond gaming though, there's more of an argument to be made for the 3060 because of stuff like NVENC. But either way, for the giveaway system, I will be giving the winner the choice between the 2 graphics cards. Let me know which one you'd choose and why in the comments below. And with that, thank you for watching the video. Consider subscribing to the channel and maybe watch another video. A suggestion will pop up in a second. And until the next video, thank you for watching. Bye bye.